Hello, everyone. My name is Mick B, and I'm a top 4 expert division coach, putting me at a tier 3 slash tier 2 level. I've never really done much of any analysis videos. I've never really done much in terms of like public coaching content. I've only really done like private coaching, team coaching, and then I do Fiverr coaching as well as a freelance coach. But I thought I'd do a little bit of an analysis of this pro game between Telesi and 1234, specifically just Goldenpants POV as a guide how to sort of play Wrecking Ball into unfavorable matchups. Maybe you have a ball team yourself, maybe you're a ball player yourself, or maybe you're just like kind of interested in the macro of it all. So this is not going to be anything super like pre-thought about. Like I haven't really gone through the whole game. I've obviously seen the game before, but it's not going to be a scripted kind of video. It's going to be more of a walking through it with me type video. So I hope you enjoy, and all right, let's get into it. I'm going to just let it roll out for the beginning here, and then we're going to pre-establish a few things. Okay, so at this point, Goldenpants comes forward, and he sees what the enemy is on. He sees that they're on a Mauga comp. So, big thing about Mauga comp is that normally in ball comps, ball quite likes to force objective to create an extra angle. Um, but obviously into a Mauga, Mauga also quite likes forcing objective, and he wins the tank trade in that regard. If Mauga is allowed to just hold down both his guns on Wrecking Ball, Wrecking Ball is going to lose. So now the question becomes, how do you adapt and change your playstyle? They also have the Cassidy, which obviously Mauga Cassidy is, for most Wrecking Ball players, an absolute nightmare to deal with. But there are things to be done. So I'm going to assume that most of you have like some idea about what Wrecking Ball does, right? But how do you play into counters, right? And there's a couple of things that I would want everyone to consider in terms of trying to play into counters, right? Number one is going to be angling and shooting. So finding an angle where you can just utilize your gun to fish for opportunity as to not commit your slam. Can't commit slam early or out of opportunity. If you commit slam into a Mauga with E and a cast next to the Mauga and a Kiriko and so on and so forth, you're not only going to do essentially nothing, but you're also very likely dead. So committing slam is going to be one of those things that comes at a premium versus this composition. And I think this is where a lot of people start to struggle when they play ball into counters. What do I do then, right? How do I move away from being the slam bot that I usually find value from? That's my whole, value. That's my whole character. That's my identity. How do I move away from that and create value in other ways? So angling and shooting is going to be one. Um, roll through and disrupt. So this is just essentially um, rolling through makes you do like the 60 damage on any fireball, and it also makes you sort of like knock down people a little bit, like knock them away a little bit. And you can sort of layer a little bit of point touch, point touch. Excuse me. You can layer a little bit of point touch with it as well, for potential like objective stalls while fishing for an opportunity. We'll probably see some of that. And then the third thing, so in many compositions, you want some sort of like split. Obviously, the market composition is going to be a composition that a lot of the time is going to stack together, especially in very heavy old fights, right? Like they're not going to split too much. Obviously, Tracer is an exclusion. Tracer is going to be oftentimes taking the angle, so to speak, the flank, right? Creating that extra angle. But a lot of time, this composition is going to be quite stacked, especially when they have ultimates like Kitsune. I didn't actually mean to do that. Don't know if you can. Oh no. Well, we'll write it back up again. Don't worry about it. But when you have Kitsune, when you have Beat, when you have Mauga Cage, particularly a lot of the time, you're trying to force a back to front by forcing point as well, right? So you're going to force a back to front from point. Let me just quickly write up these things again. And number 4 is going to be ultimates, right? For example, we have the tidal blast available here. There. Like tidal blast, right? That can give you a solve where, because of the combination of tidal blast and E, you can have enough HP to sort of like go back in, avoid the cast flash, especially once you have the major perk as well, and then you can sort of like get a knockdown on the Cassidy, and then this can pretty much like make you get a turn. Like it forces you to be able to get a turn. For example, right? Like there's like a couple of things, right? There's a couple of things, right? So anyway, these are like what we're mostly looking for, right? These are what we're looking for, and we're going to go through this game from Goldenpants' perspective and essentially establish what it is he's doing, what the merit is, what he's looking for. So you might be able to also sort of like look for these things yourself in your own games. Okay. So we spot the Mauga comp and we immediately sort of back up to the side angle here. We are not trying to take a slam in main here. What we're going to do is we're going to play slow until point unlocks, and we're essentially just going to be shooting and setting ourselves up so that we can potentially progress our angle without getting sort of like caught between a rock and a hard place. Like you cannot get forced to play a specific way right now. And the reason for this is so we can allow our anglers here, so we can allow Vendetta, so we can allow Shion to sort of like fan out, right? And the support as well. Like fan out and take angles around the objective. Because this is going to be key for us to be able to shoot out this Mauga. Okay. Just a very, very slow passive playstyle, right? Not trying to force anything. Just waiting for this point to unlock. Now, eats a little bit of poke. Sort of like scouting a little bit, eating a little bit of poke. This is getting healed up by the Wu Yang. Completely fine. I would imagine a lot of the time here that the Wu Yang is actually going to be the one to play for the ball, and that Kiriko is going to just basically find an angle with a DPS a lot of the time, right? Mauka is walking forward to try and force point, and we sort of like just ever so slightly do a little boob on him, just to sort of get some damage alongside whatever pressure we have around with our angles as well. And we're poking him out, right? But we're not committing to anything. Just very, very light work. Staying within armor threshold here. Drops down. Finds... See, this is the type of angle, right? This is the type of thing you want to do when your ball comp team has, like, angles around the point. Shoot, 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 shoot. We are not forcing the slam. Rolling through because Tracer is marking him from behind, so he kind of has to, like, remove himself from that pincer. Finds an opportunity to take a slam here. And it gets the flashbang out as well. So this is looking somewhat decent for us, right? Like, we actually managed to lift this. This really risky play, like high risk, high reward kind of play. And now we should be able to sort of establish angles a bit, and they don't have the flashbang. Gets the Susu. And now goes for the back. Starts shooting the back line a bit. Grabs the health pack. Again, just rolling between his supports and health packs, just taking angles, playing super, super slow. Forces the Mauga to go back here. Mauga has used their cooldowns, and we've created, by having these angles around us, and whatnot, we've sort of like baited out Cassidy a little bit. So now we're gonna go take some aggression on the split, and we get the trade. And now, once we have sort of like a little bit of a resource advantage, and we've gotten a pick off of our trade here. Now we are down Vendetta, obviously, but they are down Cassidy, which is a major reason why slamming backline is going to be difficult for him. Now that that's sort of gone, we start taking much more aggressive turns. We start getting a little bit more active. Now this trade's a lot of HP, but it also grabs a lot of attention, which all of your anglers in your ball comp should then be able to capitalize off of. So, crucially, this fight didn't really go our way, mostly because we just ended up trading out Vendetta. It's unfortunate. But notice how Goldenpants is at no point trying to force anything specific. He is just simply, trying to create opportunity. So it's truly for him, it's a marathon, not a sprint. It's a sort of attempt at prying open this crate very slowly, very gently. And then once you have it open, you go for it. Okay, rinse, repeat. We're going to do much of the same. We're going to be gently touching point, and in this case, while gently touching the point, Lars completely misses his cage timing. He was trying to catch that ball, sort of like roll through with cage, but completely misses it. We Kitsune, and this is going to be a staple in ball comp. You might sort of ask yourself a bit like, is this Kitsune not potentially not that far pushed up? Is it not potentially not the greatest Kitsu ever? But one big thing about ball comp is that you inherently are going to have a worse Kitsu than they do. So what this Kitsu is going to be used for, so you can imagine like Cass and Lucio, Mauga, and Kiri, they are going to get much more use out of their Kitsu than we are because we're going to be playing different angles, right? Like we're going to be fanning out. We're not really going to be stacked trying to force a front to back. So by and large, and this is going to be the next important thing to understand about ball comp, and especially ball comp versus non sort of like split comps and more sort of like versus like stacking comps. Another great thing to think about here is that you struggle mostly with retaking. So how do you actually retaking? Question mark. One, um, clear angle, take angle. Two, ultimate, just to establish angles. So you are more likely to want to come back here, use Kitsu, not with the intent of necessarily winning the fight, but using Kitsu to create some kind of like pressure point where we can now say, hey, we're not going to win necessarily from this Kitsu. We might, but we're not necessarily going to win with this Kitsu. But what we are going to do is we're going to allow our Tracer and we're going to allow our Ball and we're going to allow our Kiriko to regain the sort of webbing around the point, while also not sort of like forcing a fight into that Kitsu because we don't really win into that Kitsu. So retaking is sort of like a bit difficult at times. One of the things ball comps like to do as well to sort of retake is by having ball or tracer. Actually, I'm gonna do ball slash tracer point touch. The point is sort of an angle as well. So versus other teams, if ball is on point here and you can force something to come to ball that doesn't really want to meet ball, on point. You can sort of like force like a funnel almost. It's like a funneling effect. You funnel something towards point while everyone else then takes the space left around the point. But that's not doable into the Mago, which is kind of the point of this video. It's not really feasible because Mago will just trade you out way too easily. Nice. Ball continues doing essentially what Ball has been doing for the beginning of most of these things. Have to take a little bit of a staple here because there's a Heinun coming through. Now, this is where the fight gets rather chaotic, and we are just essentially at this point. The reason we're not trying to do anything too much more than what we're doing right now is that we're obviously out in the ahead in the trade, right? They're down their supports and whatnot, and we have the angles on this Mauga, so we're just gonna shoot out right now. Set up further forward, trying to have some sort of like forward hold. This serves two purposes. You essentially on most points you have three types of holds, right? You have your well, no, you don't have three types of holds. That's not true. But you have three things you need to consider. You have to consider the neutral fight on point. You have to consider the hold up, and you have to consider the retake. So we talked a bit about sort of like retaking. Obviously, not too much. So the hold up is essentially just we hold a bit further forward where there's still angles to be had on their path to point. And the reason we do this is that it's able, especially for ball comp, but also for other comps. you're able to have a fight here and take a early hit on them on their rotate to punish them, right? And also it's possible, sort of like, even if you don't fully commit here, it's possible to slow down their rotate and shoot out their rotate. So like the walk up, shoot out their walk up, potentially create a slowdown there, or even opportunity to go. And even if we don't read any kind of opportunity, we can fall back to point, and then we can still have a fight around point, right? So we can slow them down while we're in control of this point. The other reason is also, like, if you have ultimates, especially if you have a ultimate advantage, which they do right now, because they're up ultimates quite significant if you count like pulse bump, which you don't really count, but also if you count overclock, right? So we can use these ultimates to sort of like be more aggressive, make it really difficult for them to take up, right? Um, and then the other reason is also just like scouting purposes, like getting your hit scan up to scout where they're going, getting wrecking ball up to scout where they're going. That gives you more information about what they're doing, and so you can adjust your positioning around where they're going. So we mark Tracer a bit. We spot that they're coming from the side fight here on the right side, and then we haven't really found much of an opportunity, so we're just letting them path the point. But now we have the information about what they're doing, and we have more time to make a plan. Try to mind their rotation to get beat out. Perfectly good trade. Notice how we're almost just letting them have like point presence. That's one thing you need to really learn about ball comp, is even when you're in control of point, it's completely fine just to give them point presence if you can take the angles around the point. Now, the reason why it's also completely fine is because the plan was always to use Tidal Blast to sort of like cheat the system a bit and allow Goldenpants to just take a to take like an engage here. Probably going for the Cass. I can imagine Cass is like the easier target to sort of like just get knocked down, but we'll see. Yep, absolutely. And then that creates a turn with very little risk for Wrecking Ball. Okay, now for this point, it's going to be very difficult to have Wrecking Ball touch point a lot, because it's a very open point and it has high ground around the point. So what I would expect Goldenpants to do here a lot more so is try to disrupt the high ground and take the high ground away from them before we sort of like try much of any shenanigans. Because in a similar vein, if we can also control the heights and the angles around point, it's a very easy to sort of like shoot out Mauga on this point with the height available. So again, we're just scouting and we're allowing everyone to sort of like spread around. This time we actually see Kiriko go with ball, and then Wuyang going a bit more for Tracer. Completely fine. Soch in main, slamming height, try to disrupt height, getting the flashbang out. Kiriko just sort of like carrying that. A little bit of like point touch here, a little bit of like just sort of like, rolling around, figuring out what to do, getting a boop down. Alright. Baits out the high noon, and then they're gonna use high noon try to essentially cap the point. Doesn't really work out that great for them. Kitsu here to re-establish angles again, allow everyone to fan out. Saving mines for cage is a very stable in the matchup, because mines can break the cage, and if you don't break this cage as a wrecking ball, you are, well, dead. So that breaks the cage. It's a little greedy, but essentially takes the opportunity to sort of like flip the map rather than stabilize. And this leads us into another great point for Wrecking Ball stuff in general, is that a lot of the times for Wrecking Ball, we do not need to actually play in and then sort of like kite out for safety. What we can do is we can kite one of the angles our supports us on, and we can almost like map flip, because this space is equally safe for Wrecking Ball. Wrecking Ball doesn't really care about sort of like creating the line at a distance. If we're playing like a Sigma composition, we'd be wanting much more to sort of like see if we can force this top here or force this main, into the Mauga. But in this case, Wrecking Ball doesn't really care about the Mauga anyway, so safety is not back towards your perceived main angle. Safety can be anywhere on the map, and in fact, this can be a lot better because it sets you up better for like having the webbing around point as well. So this is a what we would call a it's not quite a roll through. It's like a map flip. Like you flip the side, right? Nice. Manages to get a little bit of like sort of, you know, trading on the Mauga here, potentially just to farm title blast, right? So a little bit of like that kind of stuff. They kind of know it's going to be very difficult for them to do much here unless an opportunity happens. They're also now down one in the tracer. So we're just basically playing slow and farming the title blast to force disengage again. Trying to anyway. Yeah, kite out on the side here. This is kind of a tough position for them to be in. Would very much expect this to go not so great for them. Okay, find an isolated target, probably called by teammates in main. Goes for but the fireball stops on the hit there, and we lose grapple. So we have to stabilize. Going again for the backline here on the respawns. Trying to catch the respawns and sort of like slow them down a bit while we establish space. Doesn't find an opportunity. And this is the punishing split sort of things, right? So Lucio is like isolated on the split on the high ground here, so there's an opportunity for Goldenpants to go and punish the split and sort of like just get on these squishies and be active, whereas in the Mauga there is no opportunity. So because they sort of like tucked away on the high ground here, this is within what Goldenpants can control. Staging around the point here. Again, the plan very likely is to just essentially trying to read where they're going. Almost let them go for the point here. Take angles around that sort of like pathing. And then find an opportunity to take some kind of engage. We pop OC here. Absolutely. Down a support. Down to... So, the overclock came through a bit late here for them. I think the idea of the OC was kind of like fine, right? Like we take angles around the point, then we use the OC to sort of like really solidify ourselves here, potentially use OC to force out Kitsu. On the retake is like a very common thing a lot of like teams will do. So essentially you use hit scan ult or like overclock or override protocol on Emre. That forces like a support ultimate, and then in their case they would have essentially just banged on or like banged on getting the Kitsu up themselves and then use Kitsu. But Kanale gets like kind of popped, maybe a bit late on the Kitsu. I don't know. I didn't really see the perspective of Kai here, but like maybe just a bit late on the OC. Anyway, we're down 2. We're gonna play slow. We're gonna fall back, shoot our gun a little bit, but we're not really gonna overstep our boundaries here. We are gonna fold. Cage comes out, so it's mines for Cage. Wonder if we can find a Kitsu here. We can find a Kitsu. We get flip. 2 ultimates. Nice. Just punishing the split. Forcing the front to walk back here a little bit with ultimate, and then punishing the sort of like the squishies in the back, or the split. Beautifully done. Again, we have this sort of like forward scouting with like loose positioning around it in case an opportunity represents itself, I was gonna say. And ICAV has gifted the opportunity of the century, and that's a kill. And that's the reason you do the forward hold. Forward hold and poke, not necessarily to commit, but just in case you can commit, because you can always kite. Everyone pushes forward on this opportunity, just for like some sort of like cleanup. Using a lot of our resources here. And now we're in a pretty good position for this point, I'd say. Pretty good. Enemy tracer forcing point. Misses the roll for a bit. Unfortunate. But finds it another way. Massive ultimate fight here. High Noon comes through. Beat comes through. OC comes through. Decides to just play live as to not fight into this composition with a Kitsu. Fair estimation. Good idea. They're in control of point. Notice how they weren't really too bothered about sort of giving the flip here. And that's, again, like I mentioned earlier, a very core trait for like ball comps is the idea of like, we can just give them the flip here. We don't need to sustain point for percentage necessarily. Because if we can just have the angles around the point, it's actually so fine. And they had Kitsu. It was very difficult to fight into them. If we force it back to front here, we are essentially just dead. Nice. Massive slam on the backline here. Forces the Mauga back. It's going to just basically disengage that. And then we get the flip back. And they now have to retouch into mines. Beautifully done. Mauga dies for it. This is what we call a high IQ play. Hovering above point. Finds a nice commit. Kitsu here, just to sort of like combine with the ball slam, just sort of like create some sort of like opportunity. Again, the Kitsunes in this composition, you rarely use them for like a huge sort of like team brawly fight. You just kind of use them to maintain tempo and to like maintain your angles. Just sort of like maintain that bit of space. Cage comes through. We do not have mines for this. And this is what happens when you do not have mines for it. And it's arguably even worse because we have to also commit sort of like I think what happened here is that Crispy wanted to use the Tidal Blast to save Goldenpants, but it was a little bit too late. Not really too sure what happened then. Kind of used it on themselves, and then it ended up being a really bad ultimate from Crispy. Spots the Mauga a little bit ahead, goes for the roll through, still afraid of the flash obviously. Tries to sort of like initially just like signal point as to get them in on point, sort of like funnel them back in. And after the funnel, we're probably going to go for a mines touch here because they do not have cage. No mines. We use OC instead. Now mines. Mining off like the side area here instead of the point. Marking the tracer as to essentially sort of reclaim this side of the area. Now reclaim. Now his team can walk up. Gonna play a little bit slow until team can walk up here. And then we go for the hit. Hit comes through. Just stacking inside this little room. So one of the reasons why they stack inside this little room here is that one of the core things you can do versus a wrecking ball is if you play. So normally you'd play sort of like cover, right? You'd play behind this like cover. But versus a wrecking ball, cover doesn't mean too much because he can just like fireball through you. He can sort of like flip inside and just shoot you. He can slam you. But one thing wrecking ball cannot do a lot of times in little rooms is have free maneuverability and also cannot necessarily trigger the slam, right? Like, so it's a little harder to gain the height inside a little room to trigger that. So something you can do is like play under roofs, which is why this Kiriko and Cass is playing under this roof, as to kind of just make it really, really difficult for the Wrecking Ball to do anything, because he can't enter, he can only slam outside. If he enters as well, he get flashbanged, and now he's kind of stuck in this room. It's going to be really, really, really big trouble for him. Tracer marks ball. Have to fold angles a little bit. And this is what you do not want to see in ball comp. You do not want to see the ball comp having to fold their angles. And then in OT not having the point here with no good ultimates, right? Because now we don't have a cheat, which means that we cannot force this on point, but we need to force it on point because it's about to get cleared out. Managed to get a lot of pressure going here. Cass is way deep for what it is, so we're gonna get the Cass here. So whenever, again, something, and this counts for pretty much anything in ball comp. Let me drop a little bit of an extra piece of information here, right? So to speak. So whenever you are coming back and you're retaking your angles, right? You might wonder, especially in the ball mirror, if I'm like Wrecking Ball here, I have my Tracer here, I've got my Kiriko, got my Wu Yang, right? Like everyone's just coming back through main, right? You might wonder, at what point do I bother sort of helping the front line? And at what point do I just ignore the front line and then go deeper and set up behind, right? And there is a really, really great way to kind of think about it, especially for lower level players. But the rule of thumb is in the ball mirror, if the Wrecking Ball is like the enemy Wrecking Ball is here and you're here, and your team has the angles on him, that means if you shoot your gun, he's forced to sort of like go and stabilize. If you can force the enemy Wrecking Ball on your retake to go and stabilize, as soon as he stabilizes, your team can sort of like take the angle that that Wrecking Ball was occupying, and now you can go and hit the back, so to speak. You can go and sort of like hit the back, and that's really good. So the rule of thumb is like, if there's a whole sort of like team front to back, this ball is being sustained, they have the better angles on you. You likely will want to sort of have your team kite the angle and you go deeper and disrupt sort of like rotations and whatnot. But if you can shoot out the enemy tank early, or anything really for that matter, this is what's happening here, right? Is essentially we don't need to go much deeper than right here because there's an opportunity that Cass is overextended and we have 4 people looking at this Cass. And so we just kill it, right? And this would be the exact same. Now, this is obviously not like right at the beginning of the fight. This is like after a little bit of rolling through and whatnot. But if you come back into a situation where somebody is just very obviously like, we can angle him out and just kill him, well, you do. Or, in the case of a tank, force them out. Cage doesn't really bother with the mines here, I think, just because we're so up in the trade. Maybe should have, to be honest. Maybe should have bothered with the mines. I don't really know what the plan here was. I think Goldenpants thought that because we cleared the Cass and we had the angles around this, we would be able to sort of like break the cage without the mines, and we nearly do, but potentially a bit much of a gamble there. Probably should have just popped the mines. Tough retake fight for them. OC probably going to be used here as soon as we sort of like start touching. Probably going to be some sort of like swing with the OC. They do have like a huge advantage here. So it might be a case of sort of like just using OC, getting beat out of it, stabilizing, and then finding out what to do from there. OC comes through after the touch. We get the beautiful assassination on the Lucio here, which is exactly what they need. They need that beat gone, so it ends up being an OC for a high noon. The high noon doesn't get much of anything. We get the flip. The forward hold. We've explained this one before. Let's see how it goes this time. Find a nice hit here. It's not going to do too much. It's just going to be a slowdown. And then we're going to fold backwards. So we drop back a corner, essentially. So hold forward. Take what you can get. No risk. Backwards. We do not want to force the fight here. We just want to have we want to tap our toes into the market. See if there's anything worth buying. This time, the only thing was worth buying is a slight slowdown from a Wrecking Ball turn. And that was it. We just leave it. Learn from that. Super, super important. ICAF finds 2. And now Wrecking Ball. Essentially just gonna try to get away with his life. Touch. Gets the OT. Perfectly done. Got away with his life. Touch for the OT. We're now just basically going to be rolling through the point to re-trigger OT as many times as possible. Trigger OT, back out. Trigger OT, back out. Another OT touch. Back out. And this is one of the hardest sort of like positions for Wrecking Ball comp to win in is exactly here when you don't have the ultimate and you sort of have to re-trigger this. Something needs to give right now. We need a sort of like a high risk, high reward type of play in this moment. We need Tracer to just basically go and find a pick here. We need Wrecking Ball to like force a really aggressive turn. We're just essentially doing what we've been trying to avoiding to do because we now no longer have any other options. Keeping the touch, find the angles on Lasia. So again, as said, if you can find the angles on the enemy tank, right, and you can just shoot him out, just shoot him out. You don't have to go for the backline. Occupying the backline a bit here, and we managed to flip. Early hit into somewhat of a dogfight here, probably, I would imagine. Cage comes through. Tidal Blast. Goldenpants is just trying to live. They get the flip. We mine from top. This is just a big old fight, really. Not too much of like great interest in this. We managed to hatch it out in the end. And 1, 2, 3, 4 wins. Narrowly. Alright. If you like this type of content and you thought it was interesting, maybe not the highest quality, but interesting at the very least, and you learned something, then give it a like, leave a nice comment, tell me who your favorite ball player of all time is, and then any feedback for what I could do differently, I would highly appreciate it. Alright, thank you so much for watching.